How you doing, folks? Welcome back to Onward with Onrie. I'm your host, Kompan. And before I go into the topic of this week's episode, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for tuning into the show. We're starting to see increased views on the show, and that means so much to me. So if you like what I have to say, please subscribe to our channel. Please share it with your friends. All of my wisdom that I share with you is is provided to you in order to help you achieve the success that I have over the years through this crazy business of comics. So once again, thank you for tuning in. And today I want to talk to you guys about something that I think all of us creators go through at some point or another. It's blocks. And today I want to give you guys some thoughts about how to kind of work through that process, because there's something that we don't do often enough, and that's give credit to ourselves for what's actually going on behind the scenes. And what I mean by that is we're all given brains, and our brains, they never stop working. Even when we sleep, our brains are working, and they're solving problems for us without us even knowing about it, and without us even realizing it. You ever have that moment when all of a sudden you get that eureka moment, when something that you've been trying to solve in your mind for weeks on end, or something you were trying to remember, suddenly just pops right back into your brain at that one moment when you least expect it? Don't think that didn't just come out of nowhere. Your brain has been working to solve this problem over the course of however long it took for you to come up with the solution. Which is why I believe that every problem, no matter how difficult, has a solution. You may not like the solution, but it has a solution. So let's work through some of the problems that some of us face as creators in the comic book world and beyond. This is anything that, anywhere you are forced to be creative, there is the potential for there to be blocks. So how do we work through that? I think aside from knowing that, now that we know that our brains are working around the clock, we now have to be considerate of what the brain needs to do in order for the problem to solve itself. And it's kind of like allowing the problem to just kind of leave you for a moment. And how do you do that? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. When time is an issue, you have to do the best with what you have. If you have plenty, step away from your work when you can. Like, for example, if you're just overwhelmed with something, if you're writing and all of your dialogue is just crap, you're not happy with anything you're saying, you're too influenced by something else you've read, whatever the case is, step away when you can. If you're not on some tight deadline, give yourself time to do that. And that's the beauty of being a self-publisher, is that you determine what the deadline is. So that doesn't mean that you can always push your deadline back. Sometimes you have to, push forward and get it done no matter what. Like, for example, if you've had a successful Kickstarter campaign and you've promised product at a certain point and you've passed your deadline, well, now you have to work harder in order to get it done. And if you are in that moment where you have no choice but to meet your deadline and you don't have the chance to step away and allow your brain to work things out, well, now you have to rely on your instincts. And you just have to roll up your sleeves and get the job done using the skills that you have. So, you obtain skills as an artist or as a creator, as a writer, from everything you absorb. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be within the practice that you're working in. So, like, for example, if I'm just working in comics, not all of my inspiration comes from comics. It can come from movies, it can come from video games, it can come from music I listen to. It can come from anything. It could come from me just going for a walk and, having a conversation with my wife, spending time with my children. Whatever the case may be, find that, give yourself that time to kind of solve that problem in your head by stepping away. And again, if you can't do it, well then, you use the skills that you have developed over the course of time. So, like, for example, I just worked out a scene with Dak on Hunter Destroyer 1. And I was referencing a lot of Will Eisner's work. I mentioned that on last week's episode. So I've been reading a lot of The Spirit and paying attention to Eisner's layouts, and he does really brilliant layouts. But to read Eisner's work in The Spirit is kind of difficult for me. It's not that I don't like it, but I have to be paying attention when I'm reading it. And it's very pulpy and noir, and you just have to be in that frame of mind of wanting to read those kinds of stories. Unfortunately, right now my interest is going all across the spectrum. I recently went back and visited the movie Logan, and I really enjoyed it, and that's now gotten me into wanting to read more X-Men comics. So it's my interest is moving in different directions, but I used Logan to help inspire me to create my latest spread. And Dak and I looked it over, and it was influenced by all the things that I have been exposing myself to. And I read so much Eisner that Eisner's writing style kind of worked its way into my script. And it wasn't intentional, of course, and that's the great thing about having Dak as a co-writer, is that he can look at everything objectively and tell me what is working and what isn't, and we can move from there. So, it's just a matter of, giving yourself the chance to explore different things, and if you have the time to walk away from it, walk away from it. If you can't, then, when you're on that crunch, you look at everything that you have exposed yourself to, and you just work off of whatever it was that worked for you. Because essentially, at the end of the day, when you finish your product and you get it out there into the market, your customer is you. So if you wouldn't read it, why would you expect anybody else to read it? As a dealer now, this is the one thing that I've learned as I've adopted as my philosophy. Kevin and I have adopted as our philosophy. We buy and sell what we love. So that's how every publisher, that's how every retailer, that's how everybody should be thinking, especially you. So when you roll up the sleeves and you're working on that time crunch and you get the job done and you do the best you can, once you get it done, maybe you won't be happy with the results. But if you apply yourself to the best of your ability, if you're not just caving in or whatever, get it done. And here's the beauty of being a self-publisher. If you're not happy with the end results, just keep pushing until you get the results that you want. If you're working for somebody else, well, then you have to kind of let the work go. And at some point you're going to have to let it go anyway, even as a self-publisher, because you have to move on to the next thing. But the one thing that I have to say that has helped is the fact that working with Dak on Yi Sun Shin, and even while I was working on Marx, I allowed myself the time to, go over everything in as much detail as possible. And there's things we miss. There's some spelling errors and some things that I wish I could have caught when before sending Marx off to press, and I missed it. And every single time I open up that book, there's that error. But I did the best that I could. I think everybody on the team did the best that they could, and you let that stuff go. And you focus on the big picture. The big picture is I got my second book out there, and now I can pitch it and sell it, and people can enjoy it, right? The next time I go back to press, I now know that I've made these mistakes, and I can go in and fix them. It's really just that simple, right? So remember, while all this is happening, your brain is working. So, allow yourself the ability to move past it. You will learn from your experiences, and you will get better as you go on. Now, and that brings me to my second point. When working through your blocks, you need to be patient. You don't. We all stress out, but you don't want to overstress. You don't want to get to a point when, you're losing your mind, and you can't focus on the work because you're too angry, you're too anxious, you're too whatever it may be. When that happens, you have to find a way to calm yourself down. No matter what it is, you have to remove yourself. Whether let's say you have a lot of time, if you're getting to a point where you're overstressed, it's very important to just stop working for the night and go to bed. your brain will continue working it out. There's a really interesting scene that kind of comes to my mind when I think about this. If you guys have seen Doctor Strange, there's that moment when when he was in training and he was learning everything. He was sleeping and you saw a spectral form like continuing to read books even as he slept. So think like that. Your brain is actually doing that for you without you even needing to worry about it. And by pulling yourself out of the situation, you avoid overstressing yourself, and you allow your brain to kind of work out the problem. And that's really all it takes. And keeping yourself in a calm state will allow you to work through the problem. And there's going to be times when you feel like you need that answer immediately, but you just can't get that answer. Like for example, back in 2006, I went to Wizard World Chicago. I had just finished college, and my goal over there was to try and get my book picked up. And I talked with all these publishers, and they gave me all this feedback that was not favorable. They were not interested in what I was selling them at the time. But I had this ambition to have an answer for myself at that point, but I couldn't come up with the answer. So basically what I ended up doing was I left that show, and I thought I was going to go all 4 days. And after I went on Saturday, I said, you know what, I'm done. There's no more I can do at this show, because if I presented publishers or something and they're not interested in what I have to offer, then there's no point for me to come back right now. I have to take what they told me and allow that to kind of simmer and allow it to allow this problem to find a solution. And sometimes the solution hasn't even found its way towards you yet, because it may be beyond your brain or whatever. Sure enough, 2 months later, I discovered Yi Sun-shin through that DVD series that KBS put out. And if I hadn't discovered Yi Sun-shin, then I wouldn't be where I am right now. So, at that point, I knew what my problems were. I just didn't know how to solve it because I didn't need it. Or I didn't have the answers in front of me. So, patience. I needed to be patient. And let's say you're on a deadline now, and it's like you don't have time to be patient anymore. You got to get everything done, and you're stressed out and everything like that. Still take a goddamn break. Step away from the computer. Go for a walk. 10 minutes is not going to set you off course at all. Okay? If you haven't slept in 5 days or whatever, drink another cup of coffee. Talk it through. Step away from wherever you are and give yourself that distance so that you can go back in and solve the problem. It's happened with me multiple times. And the one thing I usually did, I remember when I was on deadline for Warrior and Defender number 4. I was stressed out. Me and my entire team, we were working through the entire weekend, getting art done, getting colors done, lettering the book, scripting the book, is, that's how our production process works. We actually do everything the classic using the classic Marvel method, and I wouldn't say the classic version of it, but just like a modified version of it. So basically what we start with is we have layouts and a script in place that kind of gives us a direction of what the characters are actually saying. And once we've finalized those layouts, everything goes to the artist, and the artist draws everything up. And then we have to analyze it again and make sure that the art is actually telling the story that we want it to. After that, it gets colored, and then finally it gets lettered. But during the lettering process, we're also making final script changes and making sure that we're saying everything that we want to say, because we tackle everything on Yi Sun-shin scene by scene. So it's not like we're just we're not working off of a full script. We're working off of each and every scene. So once we have the entire book together, only then can we start really scripting it and putting it together. And this is the method that we've adopted for this particular series. It's not necessarily how you're supposed to work in comics. It's just a method that works for the series and allows it to thrive and allows us to get the results that we want for the series. And whatever your results are, you'll figure them out. But just be patient. You're not going to have all the answers overnight, and sometimes you're just not going to have the answers, period, and you just got to do the best you can, like I said, and just get it out there. And then worry about it later, once you get that job out there and you realize that you didn't do your best, figure out what you did wrong, or let the audience tell you what you did wrong. But don't ask them what you did wrong. They'll tell you themselves. All right? And my third and final point is this, to helping you work through your blocks. Be sure you rest, get sleep, go for walks, exercise, and enjoy your life. You have to remember to do these things because you only get one life, all right, as far as we know. And you don't want to waste it always being angry and not happy with the things that you do, because once our work will survive us. And when we die, this is all we will have left as, a marking of who we were and what we've done throughout our existence. And when you look back on that stuff, as you're alive and as you're going through it, you should enjoy this process, because not many people get the opportunity to work in comics. And if you hate working in comics, well then find out what it is you want to be doing and go do it. There's so many people who transitioned outside of comics and went on to have very successful careers outside of it. They've gone into law, they've gone into real estate, they've become doctors. There's all kinds of things that can happen. So many things that you can do for yourself. But I think it's important for you to always have that perspective, and that's something that I really find myself privileged to be in the position to do, because last week I was, as you guys know, I was in Turkey, and it was a pretty interesting trip. It was stressful at certain moments, but when we came to certain historical places, and I got to look at these beautiful all the beautiful architecture that was surrounding me, it really put things into perspective, and it made me realize how lucky I am to be in this place, viewing this stuff, and having my health. So if you don't do those kinds of things from time to time, especially when you're under stress, you're going to get swallowed up in it, and you don't want that to happen. And you have to just remember that whenever there is a problem, there is a solution, and your brain is working it out, and time is also working to your advantage too. Everybody says like, oh, time, it's fleeting, we're losing time. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's good for time to sometimes you want time to pass forward quicker. Like let's say you're in a traffic safety school, you don't want time to slow down in a period like that. Or if you're on a flight, a very long flight, you don't want time to slow down for that either, unless you're having a good time reading and watching movies like I do. Point is that you have to be able to step away from everything and understand that working through your blocks, working through all your problems is something that you will find a solution to no matter what, because as long as you want to solve that problem, if you decided like this is a problem I can't solve, well then you've already made the decision that you don't want to spend your time doing that, and that's okay. Like there are plenty of writers out there who know that they can't sell their work, and they leave that problem to somebody else. Well, once you make that decision, that's it. And if you trust it to someone who can actually sell, and they sell your work, well then that's great. That's fantastic. We're not all built to be salesmen, and and that's okay. A lot of artists I see at conventions, they don't have to sell their stuff. Like there's this one dude, he's just incredible. He does these really cool. He takes pop culture, themes like Sonic the Hedgehog or Mario or Batman or anything like that, and he draws up these really cool original, drawings that are like based off of that are used in a ancient Japanese style, like the type of art that they had back in those days. I have been across from this guy at multiple conventions. I've bought artwork from him. This guy kills it every goddamn time I see him at a convention. He is selling left and right. He is making so much money, hand over fist. He's just doing great, and I'm so happy to see that he's doing well. But here's how he sells his work. He's got a big dome in front of his table with all of his artwork splayed out, and then people just come up to him and they buy stuff, and he's just running credit card transactions all day. He, I'm sure, talks and interacts with his customers as well. I mean, I've talked to him many times. He's a really wonderful guy. Just because I haven't gotten permission from him to use his name, I'm not going to say it here. But if you guys are in the con circuit, then you know who I'm talking about. But either way, I mean, everybody has their means of getting out there and doing what they do, and I think it's important that you find out what that is for you, and that's also going to help you work through your blocks. And it's like everybody always spends so much time thinking to themselves, I want to be the next Stan Lee, or I want to be the next Neil Gaiman, or I want to be the next this or that. Stop trying to be somebody else. Be the first you. You're the only you anyway, right? So just get out there and be the best version of yourself that you can be at all times. All right? Okay, guys, I'll see you next week with a brand new episode. Until then, onward to victory.